You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
At last, we've reached the final episode of 2024. Where has the time gone? Presented by Bet365. Welcome to Leafs Morning Take. It is Nick Alberga and Carter Hutton. How's it going, buddy?
It's going well, my man. Holidays, the school is still out for another week, so we are in the blender here in the Hutton household, but things are good, buddy. Hockey's buzzing again. It's been good.
You guys just hunkered down watching the World Juniors. What's going on there?
Yeah, we have been. We've been, just family, friends, busy, keeping going. But yeah, the World Juniors have been good, honestly. Little nerve-wracking here for Canada, buddy. Carter George, the Thunder Bay boys, that's 2 donuts in a row, so he's doing well. But at the same time, this Canadian team, let's generate a little bit of offense here.
Hey, they remind me of a team we cover on a daily basis. Don't forget, open an account with Bet365 today and bet in a huge range of markets, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase, NATION. Today, don't forget our Super Chat charity partner this season is Sick Kids. Want to make sure that your question or comment gets on the show. Hit us up with a Super Chat. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to Sick Kids, ranked the #1 research-intensive children's hospital in Canada and 3rd in the world. Is that a fair comparison, Team Canada and the Toronto Maple Leafs, the style, the brand that they're trying to play?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I'd like to see a little bit more heavy in there. I know we were chatting about it before Rosie tweeted about it. And I went to the World Juniors actually twice. I went to it, never played. I was a participant watching. I went in 99 in Winnipeg. And they just put the fear of God in you, right? It was like every guy coming over the wall was running guys, set the tone. And I feel like that was a tradition of the World Juniors. And then I went to the World Juniors again when I was in North Dakota, and that was that stack team. That was the same. That would have been my birth year. I'm an 85, so that was like Shea Weber, Phaneuf, all those guys. That was like the best team, one of the best teams ever. And again, they would just run you out of the rink, where now it's like we're just perimeter, trying to be skilled, trying to get there. I think that breaks down when you play with a little bit of grit. So it's been tough to watch in that sense, but we'll see what goes because they got a huge matchup coming up against USA.
Pardon my French. How the fuck do you lose to Latvia? Like how does that happen? How does that, like, again, my whole weekend was consumed with World Junior Hockey, watching Leafs action. How do you lose to Latvia? Like, and I know these are kids, and this is why the World Juniors is so great, and Canada could very well go on to win this tournament, but I left that game just asking how a billion times.
Yeah, that was tough. That was really tough to watch in the sense of, I guess for me, my biggest thing, even in overtime, it felt like they were just trying to force every play instead of just like trying to make something that had value. It was trying to get so pretty. And at times, I think we've seen that with this Leafs team too, right? Like at times we see them play the right style of hockey. Then all of a sudden we get into that fancy mode, skill, where when a team is just defending like that, it's going to be a tougher, right? Those teams are setting back. I think it's going to be an interesting matchup against USA now because the fact of the matter is they have similar guys that want to play skill, want to do that. They're not just going to sit back and defend like Latvia did, like Germany did. So it's going to be a different game, and it might be a little bit more of a track meet.
Well, I got a ticket on Canada to win this tournament, so I'm going to ride with the Canadians, even though I'm biased, of course, being a Canadian. And support of Sick Kids. Our friend Tammy writes in, currently I work, so not sure if there's going to be a show tomorrow, but Happy New Year's to Leafs Nation. Happy to New Year's to you as well, Tammy. There's not going to be a show tomorrow. Obviously, no show on Wednesday. Rosie's going to be back in the mix on Thursday. But honestly, I can't believe that's it for 2024. Like, it doesn't even feel like the holiday season. Doesn't even feel like Christmas. And yet we're about to bring in 2025 here.
I know. Yeah, it went quick, right? I feel like it sneaks up on us and Christmas comes, especially for us. Like, obviously, Nikki, I got kids, right? So it's like you get all this prep work and then it's like over, right? It's so fast. And now we're like transitioning to the next wave of it. And literally we're in, I hate to be like, this is the old man in me, but it's been raining here the last 2 days. So it's like brutal with kids. Like, this is where we should be skiing, outdoor rinks, but at least World Juniors are on. I think that gives me a little bit more of that holiday feel, knowing we can watch Team Canada. Cause I feel like this is a tradition old as time for me.
Yeah, it's like that, like the World Juniors song. Like when I start hearing that around early December, I'm like, it's go time for the World Junior, and just the pressure added to this tournament, especially losing to Latvia. So looking forward to New Year's Eve. Also looking forward to the clash with the New York Islanders on New Year's Eve, a matinee clash at Scotiabank Arena. The scheduling is so weird in this league. They have 3 games against the Islanders in 12 days. Like to play a season series in that short of time, I'm not crazy about it.
No, I agree too. It kind of loses its luster, especially against a team like that. So it's boring to say the least. Especially you see Patty Waugh the other day, they're at an open practice and called out his team in front of the fans and apologized for the way they were playing. They're going to work hard. I always love that. I think it's so funny when they're like, well, we're going to keep trying our best and like working hard. Like, yeah, of course you're going to. You guys play in the NHL. Like, this is an afterthought. So I always find that funny when I hear people be like, well, we're trying our best. We're working hard. Yeah, damn right you are. This is what you're paid to do, millions of dollars. So I don't love the matchups. Even during COVID, we did that where we would go and stay somewhere and you get 2 or 3 games against a team, usually 2, I think it was during COVID. I didn't like it. I like bouncing around because I think it keeps it fresh. And then when you get to the playoffs, you got to earn that right to have that matchup. So come playoff time, I think the Leafs will be ready, but they need to find a way to win some games here, consistently, I think, as we get in the second half here.
Please don't remind me of that COVID season where they played the same like 6 opponents all season long, and I had to cover that team on the radio. And I just here we go again with the Winnipeg Jets, and here we go again with the Montreal Canadiens. Like, I have nothing else to add or bring to the table. It was just that time to be alive. You talk about working relationships. I just wonder what it's like to be Patrick Waugh and Lou Lamoriello these days with the New York Islanders. But getting set for that game on Tuesday, got a bit of news from them. Practice, the final, I guess, practice for the Maple Leafs here in 2024, getting set for the game on Tuesday. But surprise, surprise, Austin Matthews taking part as a full participant at practice. So I guess he's not sitting for a long period of time as we maybe have projected and suspected here.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really know what to think with this whole ordeal, right? Is it being precautionary or is it something that they need to, bite into a little more here? But it is worrisome, right? Again, now it's like it seemed like he was out for such a long stretch of time. So maybe it was just like a little tweak if he is getting ready to go. So I don't know what to expect. My biggest worry with this whole scenario is like that Four Nations Cup kind of lingering over him, right? He's trying to get back and be healthy and be himself. And I'm sure he wants to play in it, right? With that lack of international play at that age group where these guys have been in the NHL for a long time and haven't really got to experience it. So the biggest thing for him is being healthy and getting back to where he needs to be, because come crunch time, man, this guy is going to be needed, because when it gets into tight games, he can be a difference maker.
My biggest fear, my biggest concern is it gets to the Four Nations and Matthews has a mishap or, hurts something again. And it's like, my goodness, here we go again when it comes to, the injury process. That's what concerns me.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I just think like there's so much going on, this whole team. It's so hard to know what's going on with the Leafs organization, right? When it comes to injury, this day-to-day and all the BS that goes on, how they hide everything. So again, for me, I think it's got to be a little disheartening and worrisome at times, right? Because you never know what to expect, right? Like I think when the injury first happened, right, and he went day-to-day and we were just like, oh, it's a little tweak. It's just a little bit of maintenance. Then it turned into going to overseas and all these different things that went with it. I think gets a bit disappointing in the sense of like, where is he really at? And I think it gets frustrating, even from my standpoint, from a guy who played in the league and I understand how it works. But at some point, you just want to know where you're at, like injury wise, and where this team is, because you kind of get your hopes up that he's, ready to go. And then there's another tweak. So I'm not sure what to expect here, Nick. Honestly, I think we're all in the clouds here a little bit when it comes to the IR and injury bug with the Leafs.
Huts, I think producer Vic is scared of you. He has told me to tell you to stop banging your mic because it sounds like a big gong on the podcast.
Banging my mic. What are you talking?
It sounds like a gong. And Vic texted me because I guess he's scared of you because you're the former pro athlete. So he didn't want anything to do with that. So he made me do it.
I didn't know I was banging it. Maybe when I hit this, is that it? Bang.
Yeah.
Bong.
What is that?
I don't know. Maybe it's this big cord, like the thing you have, this little thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What do you think? I'm holding my mic, Vic?
The other question we had for you, did you kick your kid out of his room when he's home for the holidays? Like, that was a big question I had for today. Because, of course, as people know, he does the podcast in his kid's room with the map behind you.
Yeah, like we could do a little tour of the room there. There's my kid's bed, and
nice.
He's got his Pokemon on his bed. The kid's not here though. Kid isn't here. I don't know if I'm supposed to be touring the room right now of a kid's 7-year-old's room, but he's actually at a hockey clinic here. So he went to go skate for an hour, and I'm going to go pick him up. But he is kicked out of the room officially when I got to work. Dad's got to work, kid.
Maybe make an office. I don't know. Did you make like 5 sheets a year with Buffalo?
Not that much. Well, yeah, maybe 5 sheets a year Canadian now with the dollar. So, but no, we'll see. We're working on it. Okay. Next spring, we'll have a new office. We'll make it all pretty for you. Okay. Vic, are you happy now?
Always happy with you, buddy. You're the best. So Carter Hutton alongside, we did get a Yanni Hakanpää sighting over the weekend. I didn't want to bury the lead on today's podcast because I had been mulling that question over on the pod for like the last month. Where in the world is Yanni Hakanpää? There was a Hakanpää skating. He's still a ways away, the verbiage on Yanni Hakanpää. We're not going to see that guy for a while. I'm still amazed he was picked for the Four Nations for Finland.
Yeah, I know. It just shows you the lack of depth Finland has, right? They're taking a guy that has been
Yeah.
irrelevant this year. It hasn't even played. It's just literally that's like the biggest thing it shows you. Where like Canada, we're arguing over so many defensemen. There's like 10 different players we could have made the argument that could have made the team. They made a second B team. Where Finland, we're taking a guy that hasn't even seen the sheet barely. So hopefully he gets back, but he's not even on my radar. I'm with you there.
You know what is on my radar, Huts? The Nation Vacation. The first ever Nation Vacation happening Thursday, March 20th to Sunday, March 23rd. If you want to chill with the likes of Carter Hutton, Jay Rosehill, Zach Phillips, even producer Vic, myself, and a cast of others as we get set to watch the Maple Leafs play the Nashville Predators at Bridgestone Arena. As we've talked about, we're going to do some live podcasts from Huts' bar, Love and Exile out in East Nashville. We're offering 2 packages, one with flights, $24.50 plus tax, one without, $12.99 plus tax. Hotel rooms are double occupancy, but Huts, this is going to be an unbelievable trip, buddy.
Yeah, and I think what gets left off that wall, we can join a bit of greatness on there too. The shotgun wall, Nick. I don't know if you got a chance to see it or join it. There's a wall in our bar where if you get a can of wine, usually rosé, the only guy I've ever seen chug a can of Cabernet was Zach Bogosian because he's an absolute animal, former Leaf. And then you get to sign it and put it on the wall. So it's kind of one of those little things that we started when we were there. And there's a lot of NHLers on that wall. So there's people that can join on. And hopefully that turns into a pretty fun night if we start shotgunning cans of rosé.
Dude, you and Rosie are the same, where you drop names of guys you played with, but never bring to the attention of the guy who books the guests to be like, hey, I know Zach Bogosian. Let's book him on we got to get Zach Bogosian on the show. I want to know about his relationship with Mitch Marner. They're like best friends. So
there we go. I think sometimes I honestly forget too. Like I'll be like watching a game and be like, oh yeah, I played with that guy. You know where I get it is my kid gets hockey cards all the time. His grandfather buys up cards. He opens it up and his question to me is like, he either asked me if I played with him or if he scored on me. So there's usually more that have scored on me than I played with, though, which is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, that's sad. I guess when you're goalie, that does happen. And I should mention as well, I think it would be a big moment to get Zach Bogosian on the podcast because he's Armenian. You know who's also Armenian? Producer Vic.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
We got it.
So
tie it together.
Everything full circle, and looking forward to the T-Line Nation Vacation in Nashville. Again, if you want to book this trip right now, nationgear.ca. You can also check out the link in our show bio. Life's too short for ordinary vacations. Tell you what, Hutz, you got a lot of people in our chat asking questions. Never heard of a can of wine. I don't think I've ever heard of a can of wine either.
Well, we could tell them go to Love and Exile Bar. It's on Instagram. You can check it out. We got all our branding on there. Little shout out, little self plug. But yeah, so we bottle and brand stuff in Nashville. This is the American way. We got rosés, we got champagne in a can, we got sparkling red, we got sangria, we got everything, and we distribute to about 500 places. So when you're downtown, say you're at the bar in Broadway, you'd go and you can buy a can of wine, right? Where not everybody drinks beer and hard liquor. So it's been a huge seller, and it's one of those trendy things, right? Our branding's really cool, and it's for the millennial ages, so that it's really catchy. And that's about all I know about it. All I know is if you can make it for a certain amount and sell it for more, it's a good business.
I like it. I'll take a can of wine to go, please. At the Leafs Nation 401 here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. Do us a favor as we spell the end of 2024. Go where you listen on your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Maybe comment what you'd like to see on the show, what you like about the show. In general, that just would really help us out. So again, Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. Make sure you leave that 5-star review. And don't forget to visit the LeafsNation.com as we sit here and recap another weekend split. I feel like I've done like 4 weekends in a row, and it's been a weekend split where the Leafs win the first one, lose the second. It happened. Did you know they've dropped 4 in a row on Saturday night for some reason?
No, I didn't know that. You would think that would be the opposite, right? You think that would be a game where it's like Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, you'd be fired up to play. But I guess that's just a lull in the way the schedules worked out. Obviously sitting in this part, they're in a really good spot after the weekend. Don't love the split, just the way they lost that Washington game, but it is what it is on a back-to-back.
You are playing a defense attorney on today's show for your boy from Thunder Bay, Ontario, Matt Murray. Dude, he was dog shit.
Yeah, he
dog
was.
shit on Saturday.
I can't even. I hope he's not viewing today because I wasn't happy with this game. They're just sloppy, right? He was like, even when he was making saves, he was sliding, he was busy. It just wasn't his best game. And the first goal I was going to come to his defense, right? I was like, I watched it live and I was like, it looked like one of those plays because it happens all the time where when a guy goes to shoot, his like release is high and the puck comes low. It's kind of what happened. I thought right at the same point when the guy shot, the defender hit his stick, but it wasn't. It was just a bad goal, a misplayed goal. And then the one for me that's an absolute backbreaker was the second goal. Like Chikrin shot that in from the nosebleeds. Like that, you have to have a save there. That's one that just can't go in. We see it here where like he is out at the top of the circles here when he shoots this puck. That's like a routine save all day in the NHL. That just can't go in the net. And I think that's an absolute backbreaker. And then right after that, when it's 2-1, Willie Nylander had a few chances, couldn't find the back of the net. The next two, I don't really blame him on. I think the one on the broken play where it gets backdoor, he's playing that shot. It comes off the wall. There's got to be support there. And then the tip is what it is. But I think he puts himself in that spot because of those first two goals being so bad.
I always take what goalies say with a grain of salt in their post-game remarks, but Murray comes out and calls the fourth goal a dagger. I thought the first two goals were a dagger, and I thought the Leafs were playing catch-up. That building, to your point, was ready to rock. They were buzzing. The Leafs score early. The Washington Capitals are in town. Ovechkin's back. Like it's the holiday season. And I thought it was so deflating the way those two goals went in. And to your point, again, I'm not going to just jump on Murray for this entire show. Sometimes guys are just not going to have it. And, he's been a nice success story, wins against the Buffalo Sabres a week back. But I thought that really deflated the team and they were playing catch up for the rest of the night.
No, I agree. And it sets the tone for the whole game, right? I think we've seen this. I think a little PTSD, right? I think you tweeted about that, about Samsonov. And that's like a vibe that goes through a team, right? Like right away when your goalie is struggling and you see a shit goal go in, it's like deflating, right? It's different if it's one, right? A broken play, something happens. But then a second one goes in, so they're like, oh, it's going to be one of those nights, right? And guys have been around the game long enough. They're not stupid. They know when their goalie's fighting it. But for Matt, it's one of those games where, you need to make big saves, man. That's what you have to do. And I don't even think – I think the Mangiapane is one where I think the defenseman could have played it a bit better. He lets him walk right in. But you still need to make saves there. This is the NHL. There's going to be good chances. The Chikrin one's not even a scoring chance, in my opinion. That is a routine save all day, especially in the NHL. So tough from there. And then, again – you talk about the PTSD, then all of a sudden now you're trying to force it. Now you're trying to play protective. You get out of your box because your goalie's struggling, and that's how it felt on Saturday night.
Yeah, and tell you what, I think we took Stolarz for granted, what we had in Anthony Stolarz, because everything he's ever since he's left, it's been a mixed bag in general, I think, with the crease, and it just shows you how strong he was in there, where it's like now you have a guy in Murray who just can't make a save. It's been inconsistent so far for Hildeby as well. And next thing you know, the crease is a big concern for me moving forward, just because we don't really have a return date on Stolarz, and you always have to be careful when it comes to Joseph Woll.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest, black cloud over the situation is the fact that Joseph Woll's played very well, but it's like, let's not forget what we have with Joseph Woll. This is a guy that is prone to injury. How much do you use him? How much rest do you give him? And then you start second guessing yourself, because now it's like, we need to win hockey games, but we can't play our starter too much. And now we can't trust our backup. And that's when things start to get sloppy. And I think they're just going to have to try to ride a guy. Maybe you get Murray back, try to get him going in a sense, but you try to get Joseph Woll in as many games as you can, just to kind of stop the bleeding, just so it's not one of these things where by the time Stolarz gets back, they're sitting third or maybe in a wild card spot because of games they've given away with poor goaltending. So it becomes worrisome, I think, for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the fact of the matter is, what if Stolarz is more than that 4 to 6 weeks, right? What if he comes back and there is a little bit of a setback, right? That's where I think you start to get a little bit overwhelmed moving into the second half of the season, especially when the game tightens up and you need saves, right? You have to make saves, especially the ones you have to stop. Like we talked about, we always viewed it like we would rate games like goals in the NHL. Every goalie coach I had, it was like ones that were just great goals, right? Maybe you could do something a little bit different, but just like a hat tipper, we would call them. And then those ones where it's like, hey, you could have made a save, but maybe you do something a little bit different, one you might have had. And then there's just like the horrible goals, right? It was always those 3 ratings. And when you're giving up those bad goals consistently, you're not winning hockey games in the NHL. It's just unfathomable to try to win games if your goalies aren't making the saves they have to make.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in general, when you look at the crease, you're almost at a point where you have to force feed Joseph Woll. And that's what concerns me, right? Because I don't know how much faith you have in either Murray or Hildeby. I wasn't shocked. I wake up on Monday and to the news of Matt Murray being reassigned to the AHL. I know there's some cap manipulation baked in there, but Hildeby called up. How would you deploy the crease moving forward this week? So you got the Islanders New Year's Eve, then you have the Islanders on Thursday. Then you have Boston on Saturday, and then home to Philadelphia on Sunday. So there is a back-to-back. I assume it's going to be Hildeby on Sunday,
Yeah.
right?
I think you got to go with Hildeby at this point, right? I think if he falters poorly, then you go back to Murray as being the guy when it's a back-to-back. And then I guess you just tread gently with Woll, right? Because I think the worst thing you can do here is overplay your hand with Woll too, and then have him out as well. Then when you're stuck with Hildeby and Murray, that's when you're really worried. Because I feel like this is what got us in this situation. I still didn't love Stolar starting after that Jersey game. I thought in Jersey, he was the best player on the rink. It was a very, very busy night. He's a guy that hasn't played a ton of times as the outright guy, like during a whole week. Because when you're playing 3 games a week, 4 games a week, it is another animal, something that I struggled with and learned to manage as I start to play some games where years I played 50 games, where being a 30-game guy versus a 50-game guy is a huge difference physically, mentally, what goes into it. Where now if it's like we start putting Woll in that situation, I don't know. I get a little worried about a tweak or something happening. So I think Hildeby is your guy moving forward right now. Let's see what he does. And then from there, you just figure out, who is your guy when you got a spot starts in there. But even if you bounce between Murray and Hildeby.
It really feels like this team's teetering right now. And again, par for the course every year. They have an up and down December. Again, it's been the case where they're 8-6 through 14. They got one left again against the Islanders coming up on Tuesday, New Year's Eve. But it's really been a mixed bag, like not to come to the defense of Murray specifically on Saturday, but I thought there were way too many like D-zone turnovers and puck management mistakes that ultimately cost them. But again, when you're not getting the saves, you look like a much different team. I think that's what we're seeing from the Leafs here in December in general.
I agree. And I circle back to that, what I said, like when your goalie's fighting it, you play like a different style. You get away from yourself. You get worried. And I've been through that being the guy that struggled, or I've sat on the bench watching a goalie struggle, right? I was with Jake Allen where he got sat out. They didn't even bring him on a road trip. He had a really tough run for a stretch. And you could see how fragile our team was, right? There was times where you could just see that they were worried about giving up shots, trying to play different, trying to protect that. And the NHL is hard enough to play as is, let alone when you're worried about other things. And I think right now the Leafs are giving up a little more, but I think that's something that's fixable. I feel like they've built the right things into their game, right? Because I thought the game against the Wings was pretty good, and then you switch that role back to back. You start to get tired. I thought they started decent, but that early goal goes in and it's a back-to-back. And sometimes in an 82-game schedule, man, there's games where it's easy to check out, especially when you know your goalie doesn't have it that night.
Where's the defense in terms of offense, if that makes sense? They haven't scored a goal. Like I was laughing over the weekend. Chychrun, who, by the way, is in a contract here, surprise, surprise, has 10 goals. The Maple Leafs blue line has not scored in the month of December. And I think this is weighing heavily on this team. Again, it goes back to the old conversation about depth scoring. We talk about it with the bottom 6 all the time. It was great to see David Kampf have a goal on Friday night against Detroit. But the blue line is not scoring right now. And when you're paying Morgan Riley that much money, it's a pretty big concern for me right now.
Yeah, I think it should be, right? There's a few guys that are expected to help in offensively. And I think it's one of those cases of like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, though, right? Where you talk about McCabe and Tanev, these guys being such good defenders and, protecting the crease. But I still think OEL has a ton of offensive upside. Morgan Riley and these guys need to help out, scoring offensively. I also saw Kampf scored right after I called him out as my Christmas wish list. So I think he heard that early in that Wings game, where I think that sets a tone for a hockey game, right? Like that line goes out there and finds a goal early in a game. It like gets everybody into the game. Obviously Mitch Marner take over, but same thing as a D-man scores a guy who's not supposed to score in a game. It sets the tone for a game. You need that extra scoring. It can't always be your big dogs. They have to find ways because they're going to get the trickiest matchups. And I think for this Leafs team, you have to find ways to get secondary scoring, right? It's the way the NHL works. You look at other teams, you look at Washington leading the Metro, and a perfect example, like you said, Chychrun, he's been chipping in all year long, and that's something that you're not seeing right now from the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Huts, I won't lie, my biggest pet peeve from the game on Saturday, and this is nothing against the broadcast crew, but how many times they brought up the glove hand of Logan Thompson. Like, if you're the Leafs and you didn't realize the guy's a lefty going into the game, or the first 15 times he played a lefty this season, there are bigger problems in Toronto. But I think it was so cliche to bring that up. I'm not making excuses. I thought he was good. I thought the Nylander one, he put right into his glove. It was that type of night where they just couldn't get cooking against Thompson. I just give the guy credit. He was good.
I know. And the fact of the matter is, like, you don't think these guys have faced a guy that's the opposite end. Like, they had Mike Hutchinson used to play for them. He was in the system forever. Like, it's such a dumb conversation. But I feel like I get the talking point of being like both goalies are that hand, right? But I also don't think that has anything to do with them not finding the back of the net, right? These are professional athletes and they've been around the game a long time. They know where to shoot, they know what to play and how to play each different situation. And also the fact that every goalie is scouted beforehand, right? So what goes on before a game is the goalie coach breaks down every tendency of that goalie and there'd be like a film playing. So while you're taping your stick, you get to the rink, you have to be there by 2 hours before the game, by 5 o'clock. Some guys are there earlier. You're in the dressing room and there's like a video playing on repeat of the starting goalie, where his tendencies are, which position. So there'll be like a cutout, be like 40% of the goals go in high glove, 20% 5-hole, and it's all charted for you. And then there's a clip of shootout reels going, like, what are his tendencies? Where does he tend to be beaten, right? So it's not like these guys aren't prepared. It's not like they skate out there and they're like, oh man, his glove's on the wrong hand. Like, these are things that are ready to go. And I feel like that just becomes a talking point and a weak one at best, I think, from the broadcast.
I love hockey players, though. They are meatheads. I think Kyle Bukauskas on the podcast did tell the story how there was Logan Thompson revealed, didn't mention the name, but there was a guy in the Capitals like a month into the season who realized both guys, like him and Lindgren, were both lefties. Imagine that. Yeah. Like, they didn't realize their own goalies are both lefties.
That's not surprising. He's probably a good player too. I found sometimes the dumb guys were the best players because they didn't realize when they played bad, right? I played with a few guys like that. They'd be playing like dog shit and they didn't even know because they were so dumb. So I feel like sometimes being smart as a hockey player and knowing when things aren't going well can like eat away at you. And sometimes being clueless, it helps you out a little bit.
Meatheads. By the way, producer Vic, thank you so much for this text because I'm not on X as we do this show, but Matthew subbed in a couple line rushes, but is very much an extra forward at practice. So if I try to read in between the lines there, it doesn't look at least like Matthews is going to play on Tuesday. I wouldn't play him for a while. We've gone over this time. We've done like a billion segments on Austin Matthews the last couple of weeks. I think some positives, like you don't want to talk about all the negatives all the time. It's not fun and that's not fair to do that. David Kampf scores, as mentioned, first and 26. I thought the fourth line on Friday against Detroit, I was expecting like a new coach bump. It never came. It happened in game 2. I jumped on Detroit big against Washington on Sunday, and I reaped the rewards of that bet. But David Kampf in the fourth line, really, really good on Friday. And it's interesting, Ryan Reeves has lost his spot in the lineup the last sort of while here.
I know he has, right? It's one of those ones where I don't know if he will get in. The only thing I really love about Ryan Reeves' games last year, I believe last year when he was out for a while and he was kind of irrelevant, I feel like he rediscovered his game, right? When he came back, he was way more efficient and helped out a bit. So he is a guy that I know is a true pro and is going to put in the work and hopefully come back and help this team out because we still have a ton of hockey to go and you're going to need all your players on board. But for that line, I thought it was a big night, especially a way to set the tone for a hockey game and an impressive start, I think, just through and through on Friday night. And the back-to-back is tough, but again, in the NHL, it is hard to play back-to-back, right? I think there's an advantage early in the game because you can find your legs, and then from there, it tapered off. But a really good game against the Red Wings, in my opinion.
Lines at practice: Pacioretty, Tavares, Marner, Nice, Kampf, Nylander, Robertson, Domi, McMahon, Lorentz, Holmberg, Dewar. A lot of people in the chat asking about Matthew Nyes. That has been something I've noticed the last couple games, and maybe it works part and parcel with Austin Matthews being out of the lineup. But Matthew Nyes certainly not scoring at the pace as he did earlier on in the season. But again, it just shows you the turbulency that you're going to find. Nothing's really linear when it comes to kids. And you lose sight sometimes of the fact that these guys are still really, really young, still finding their footing in the National League. And Matthew Nyes is in a tough stretch right now.
Yeah, it's like anything, too. I feel like you see that a lot with players turning professional, right? I feel like you get that early season emotional high. You come in, it's easy to play. And then you start to learn the grind of the NHL, the travel and what's going on. And there's highs and lows. I think it takes time. But I also think with Austin Matthews being out, Matthew Nyes gets a little more coverage, gets a little more work. It's a little harder. He doesn't have the same space. That's the other thing. When you have superstars in your lineup, they draw more attention, right? So I think for Matthew Nyes, he's going to have to learn to play through that. But I also think at times when you aren't having it, a player like Matthew Nyes can simplify his game and just be harder and physical because he has that body and he has that presence on the rink.
Well, I think to your point, like that's the part that's not going to be spoken about. I think ultimately in pro sports, it's about production. Nyes isn't getting points, so that's what ultimately people look at. But I think he brings different aspects to the games and different intangibles, whereas like I haven't noticed that he's been struggling because he's been doing some other things, right? Just the way his style, his brand, his physicality. I think that's a really good and positive thing about Matthew Nyes' game. For me, at least, it's not all about the points. Like the production hasn't been there, but he has been doing some other things, which is always a positive.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something you can do as a player, right? Where something I feel as a goalie was such a trickier thing, I think, as I matured, because there'd be nights where you get 10 shots and you wanted to be busy, you wanted to play good. And you can't control that. Whereas a player, it's like, hey, I'm fighting it. I'm not finding the back of the net. It's not that. Well, okay, well, then I'm going to be physical. I'm going to make sure this next shift I go in and I forecheck and I hit somebody and I put my stamp on the game in that way, and it can start to come. Where that's where I think he needs to find that maturity to find it and keep fighting through, because it's a fine line scoring the NHL, right? These guys are so good, and there's no time, no space, and they make things happen quick. So if you're off a little bit offensively, it looks like you're off a ton. But I agree. I think he is maturing into a really great player. And this is the brand of hockey that I think he's going to have to play come playoff time if they want to be successful, and personally for him.
No doubt about that. Over 200 of you are watching this show right now live on YouTube. Do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Again, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review, available wherever you get your pods. And don't forget to visit the LeafsNation.com. Mitch Marner gets a hattie on Friday. I thought he was outstanding in that game. Second career natural hat trick and a nice, clean, tidy, professional 5-2 win against Detroit. I wanted to state that on the show today because that was a really, again, impressive effort. You got a goal from the fourth line, but Mitch Marner, again, proving why he's an elite talent. Like I for one, not stunned, not shocked. I know people want to make a bigger story of it than it is, but Mitch Marner is a point producer, has been 5 years ago, was last year, is this year. Yeah, he's on pace for his highest point total of his career, and maybe that goes part and parcel with the contract year, but I, for one, expected this. Again, the conversation for me is more about the Stanley Cup playoffs, but Mitch Marner has been great this year.
He has been great. Yeah, I don't think you can make an argument there. And the fact of the matter is, it's nice to see him not being one-dimensional, right? Where I think at times, he wants to be pretty and cute and carry the puck and make plays and be the creator, where last game, obviously, a few great passes, right? You look at the pass from William Nylander through the seam right to him, one-timer, drops to one knee, finishes it. And then the play by John Tavares,
Nasty.
the no-look pass.
Yeah.
I actually watched a recap again today, just like run through the
Yeah.
goals again. And it was the Detroit feed, and the guy talking about how like John Tavares like didn't know he was there. I was like, what are you talking about, man? Like that is like a heads up play. He knows what he's doing. And the finish there. And then the next one is him driving the net, tipping a puck, being the net front guy, traffic. So it's nice to see how versatile he is. And I think for him, it's just fun to watch, right? He is an entertaining player. And I'm with you. I'm on board. He is a guy that can score, can do it all, create, but there is that doubt. Let's do it in the playoffs, right? Let's find a way to contribute, be an all-around guy come playoff time, because they're really going to need him.
So ideally, like, where are you at in the conversation, Mitch Marner, who he plays with? Because I know people like to make that polarizing convo that maybe he's better situated away from Austin Matthews in the line, and maybe you put him with John Tavares. Do you care where a guy like Marner plays moving forward, assuming Austin Matthews can return at some point in time over the next week?
At times I think, I guess maybe I fall victim to the fact of, it seems like he forces it when he's with Austin, right? It seems like he's like, okay, I'm playing with Austin. I got to feed the beast. I got to feed him. Where he feels more organic when he's on other lines. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it's kind of a buzzword here the last 20 years. It's organic, right? Like it seems like
everything's just organic. Yeah.
Right. But it seems like that's what it feels like to me. It seems like when he's without Austin Matthews, he's just going to come at what the best play is. He's going to read and react and just be more natural in that sense, where at times with Austin Matthews, it's like he's trying to feed that beast. And I've seen that a lot playing in the NHL when a younger guy comes up and he gets paired with a Jack Eichel. He gets paired with a really, really good player. It's like they have to give him the puck because they feel obligated because he's the better player. He's the star. Where I think sometimes, depending, you want to spread the wealth, right? You want to be a threat, like a 3-line threat to score. But I also think that you need to put him in the best situation where you're going to get the most out of him. And I think at times he gets a little overshadowed because he's trying to get Austin the puck all the time.
The best version for me of Mitch Marner is one with a shooting mentality. And that's what we saw against Detroit on Friday. Because, again, I think it makes him so dynamic when the opposition doesn't know if he's going to shoot or pass. But ultimately, when he plays with Matthews, like, you just know he's deferring to Matthews. Like, he does this drop pass on breakaway stuff. Like, when he's just shooting, this guy's actually got an under-the-radar type shot. And we saw that over the weekend. Thompson made a good stop in that game against Washington on Saturday. But I think a guy like Marner, like, he could use that as a tool, so to speak, where it's like, you don't know what's coming. It makes me harder to play against because we know this guy's an all-world playmaker. But if you could just have that approach, that mentality where it's like, I'm going to shoot it when I'm in position as opposed to deferring to Matthews, I think it would just make him even more like lethal and potent.
Yeah, he is. He doesn't have like an overwhelming shot. Like for me, it's deceptive, right? He does. I
Yeah.
think a great example would be like the one where he beat Skinner in overtime, where he just like holds on to it a little longer than most guys would and like lets Skinner expose himself. And he's a guy that just has that patience around the net where most guys don't in those high danger areas. So him being able to shoot in those chances create a lot where I could probably say the same thing for Domi, right? There's times where
Yeah.
it's like even on that McMahon goal the other night, I was like, shoot it. Like he's in an area to shoot. They end up scoring, but like Domi does that. He refers the pass all the time, where I think Mitch does that more when he's with Austin, right? So I think, again, he can be a threat all over the rink. He is a Swiss Army knife, and he is an elite player. But again, he can finish. And I think as maybe he scores more getting that hat trick, maybe he can start to instill that confidence in him to just, I don't think confidence is the right word. He obviously has an ultra amount of confidence, but I think to shoot the puck more to be that threat so he's less predictable, but like, let's just shadow him because at some point he's going to try to make some fancy passing play.
But can you coach the mentality? Like, I mean, Mitch Marner's played so much hockey in his career. That's just the style of the player he is. Like, I don't know if you can actually coach that mentality, but it's a breath of fresh air when I see Mitch Marner in a mood where he's going to shoot the puck, not only for my bets, but also just in general. I think it just opens up so much more for the team in his game.
Yeah, there's nothing worse for me as a goalie watching a team when you like have a scoring chance and you don't shoot. Because I understand how hard it is. Like last night, a great example, Team Canada last night had like a 2-on-1 and they made some crazy behind the back play and then ends up in the corner and then they're like regrouping. Like take the chances when you get them, right? So I think something for Mitch, and I don't know if that is like comes down to the coaching, like video sessions or where they're at and like actually showing him clips of like how effective he is. And then the other thing is you may not score off the scoring chances, but it creates chaos, right? It breaks defensive structure. You regain pucks, and then from there it breaks it down. And that's why I've always been a big fan of power plays that shoot, right? It's not necessarily you're going to score on that play. It's the fact you break structure, you get the puck back, now you generate again and again and again. And that's where teams start to break down.
Edward Lee made a great point. Cute plays don't cut it in the playoffs.
I agree. It circles back to what I just said, right? I think when you shoot to creates havoc, teams get tired, and you see it all the time. Then a D-man's got to chase down to the corner to try to get a loose puck. You're first to the puck. He's out of position. Then all of a sudden you create again, and then all of a sudden it breaks teams down.
Yeah, they just get, again, every team is guilty of it, but they just get way too cute. Like, just simplify it. I feel like they've come a bit undone the last little while defensively. Again, it's a long year. We talk about this frequently on this show where it's like an 82-game slate. You're not going to have it every game, but there is concern growing for me when it comes to them defensively. But again, to your point, when you don't trust your goaltender, you come unwrapped a bit. And I think that's what we're seeing right now when it comes to the Maple Leafs. But just cut the BS, simplify the game. Like, you're going to see a lot of simplicity from the Islanders the next couple of games. And I think you go to the good spots, you will be rewarded. But I want to see more of that moving forward. Because again, I do think it's been a mixed bag in the month of December, and they got to find their game a bit. Like that a lot of people, and we got our pulse on Leafs Nation. A couple losses, man. They're back at a wild card spot, and the teams behind them all winning these days too.
Yeah, it's that time of year, right? And I've played in that situation. I remember being in Nashville the year we fired Trotz after the season and we missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
And we were like 6 points back of the playoffs. Like, not bad. And we'd go 4-1 in a stretch of 5 games. You look at the standings and we're 5 points back. And you're like, what the fuck? Right? We just went 4-1, but it's like everybody wins, everybody's getting points. So you need to have a stretch of like 8-2, or like you have one bad stretch of like 2-7. All of a sudden you're just plummeting in the standings. So there's not a huge stretch of runway. You need to keep winning games. And this time of year, it starts to tighten up. So a lot of teams, there's going to be games where it's 3-point nights where teams are always collecting points.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that's the big thing is the 3-point league. There's no more ties, right? So you really can't create as much space and separation in the standings. I think the biggest positive I would grab from the weekend is they scored first in both of those games, which Rosie always likes to bring up the last little while. They haven't been doing so. Now 4 times in the last 13 games, they've scored the first goal, but it just sets the tone in general. More times than not, when you score first, you're going to win. And the reason I bring that up because, and you know, it always happens, but things are said on the broadcast and then they don't come to fruition. The Leafs going into that game against Washington were 14-1-1, the best record in the NHL when scoring first. What happens? They score first and Murray lets the 2 crap goals in. They lose that game, but still 14-2-1 in 17 games just shows you how important it is for this team specifically to score first, Huts.
Yeah, I think there's a mentality, right? When you have the lead and playing with the lead and like the confidence it has, right? When you're behind and teams can play with structure and they have the lead, teams play differently, right? Than when they're behind. It just shows you. I think it goes part and parcel with the way the Leafs have been playing as of
Yeah.
late, more under Craig Berube. When they have a lead, there's more structure, and then teams start to overextend themselves, and they have so much offensive firepower that when teams are trying to tie games late in the games, they start to open up, and their offense is created through that conditioning of being better defensively. And I think that's what you're going to see with this team, but they need to get better goaltending when it's not Joseph Woll or not Anthony Stolarz, right? I think it just goes hand in hand with this. And if they're not going to get that, this next stretch without Stolarz is going to be very tricky and I think a sensitive situation.
This game preview is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece Program and an unbeatable pricing policy. Charm Diamond Centers is proudly Canadian-owned and operated since 1972 with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm and their sister brands. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. Again, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button at the Leafs Nation 401. So 2 in a row coming up here against the New York Islanders, the second of 3 meetings on Tuesday. The last one, a game I was at, a 6-3 win. The Islanders come into Toronto and just watch the Leafs in that game. Again, the goaltending wasn't very good in that game from Joseph Woll, but for some reason, the Islanders have the Leafs number. They've won 5 in a row in 6 of the last 7 meetings here.
Yeah, and they have, and I think it goes to the fact of the matter is like they're not really going to wow you. They're built on structure. They don't have really any superstars. Even if you count out Matthew Barzal, I don't think he's kind of fluff at times. I think he's controllable. You can keep him on the outside. So for this team, they're going to try to beat you with consistency and just grinding away and getting good goalie performances. And this is a team I think that's backs or against the wall, right? Like I got the standings up. They got Columbus is ahead of them right now in the standings, and Pittsburgh and Ottawa obviously has been playing well, but Linus Ullmark is out. Like there's blood in the water. So I think for them, it's kind of now or never, right? So these are going to be very important games. You're going to see a desperate hockey team. And for the Leafs, I don't think there's desperation by any means, but we gotta treat this with white gloves here too, right? We need to find ways to win and beat teams that are lesser than us in the standings.
The Leafs have allowed 18 goals in the past 4 games. You looking at the under in this one?
I think so. I think that's a good touch, especially with Joseph Woll coming back rested. I think it's a good chance, especially coming off the Detroit game where I thought he was very solid. You know what I mean? I think the power play goal Raymond scored is one where, it finds a way under his glove. I think it's savable, but he shoots that from the ladies' tees. Then the other one is just a tricky tip that Marner gets a piece of. So Marner got 4 in that game if he actually had that one in. But
that's true.
I look for the under on that one. I like that.
I just in general, I think I look at this matchup and I try to put my finger as to why. And I guess it just happens throughout this league. Every team, like there's somebody that you struggle with or just can't play your brand, your style that brings you success. But it seems like since dating back to that decision for John Tavares to leave Long Island, I always say on social media for greener pastures in the summer of 2018 to join his hometown Maple Leafs. Toronto just hasn't done well. Like this is a team that just continuously has their number. And I think the start specifically in this game is so important. Whereas you look at the last matchup back on December 21st, where I kid you not, I went to that game. I showed up late. I was there 6 minutes in and it was 2-0 Islanders. Like the start's everything for this Leafs team.
Yeah, and especially against a team like that, right? We just chatted about that. When teams have leads, they know how to defend leads, and especially a team like the New York Islanders, right? This is a team that doesn't have the firepower of Toronto, and this is where we look at a team with 32 teams in the league. You're going to have teams that are a little bit watered down offensively when it comes to superstars. It's just there's not enough stars to go around. So I think a team like this, it's even more important to have the lead, right? Because now they're going to try to overextend themselves and they don't have the horses to really run offensively with the big dogs, where when they get a lead, that's what they're built on. They're built on grinding games out, playing 5-on-5 hockey, having a good penalty kill to win hockey games, right? So this is where I think a huge start is going to be important, especially coming off that Washington game. And I think early Joseph Woll, if he can go in there and stabilize his team, it makes a huge difference moving forward.
By the way, Oliver Ekman-Larsson was not at practice today, absent due to sickness, the flu for him. So we'll keep tabs on that to see if he plays in this game against the Islanders. Any final thoughts when it comes to the power play? Like we've beaten this like a dead horse throughout the year, but Riley, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Nyes, PP1 at practice, Timmins, Robertson, Pacioretty, Domi, McMahon, PP2. I don't know what else to add. It's crippling. It's downright humiliating as a fan watching when you know that much star power is on the ice. They can't even gain the zone. And all I could say is like you figure this out or you're going to lose in the playoffs. It's pretty simple to me.
Yeah, it is, right? I guess maybe we're just hoping that this finds a rhythm come playoff time or later in the season when it starts to tighten up. But again, I guess for me with a power play, from my perspective, yet I always played against it, but I thought the tougher power plays for me as a goalie in the NHL were not the cute ones. It was the ones that just like generated, got pucks through traffic. And then from there, chaos ensues, right? Where I feel like at times it's always so cute and trying to be so pretty with that perfect seam, perfect play. Where I used to always hate the Leafs when they had Austin Matthews and William Nylander would come high and like circle low, right? They would just get shots on net. And then from there, it just became havoc, where at times I feel like they've gotten away from that. And they don't really have that, big bomb comparatively to some of these other teams. Yeah. I think getting pucks through and getting pucks on the cage is going to create like less is more for me, honestly.
Yeah, and like they have to be pounding that through to this team, but for some reason it's not working. I will say the PP has looked a bit better without Austin Matthews. Again, also does not make sense. Anyways, it's time for the last call. Brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet in a huge range of markets, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase, NATION. Today, just a 3-game slate as we get set for a busy New Year's Eve 13-game slate in the NHL tomorrow, but 3 games. One specifically, Huts, I'm looking at. The New York Rangers are dead to rights. And everywhere I look around this league, teams are making changes and they're firing people left and right. And then for some reason, the Rangers just sitting there and taking loss after loss after loss. I think that continues. The Panthers lost to the Montreal Canadiens over the weekend where they were not good. They were, shut out in that game to a rookie netminder. I think we see a response from the Panthers. So give me the Panthers puck line. In a rematch, you sort of forget this of last year's Eastern Conference final.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is a team that is just going to pound them. I don't know. I guess. And one thing we've learned about this Florida Panthers team is they don't stay in ruts very long, right? They don't lose games. They don't lose game consistent. Was they lose 3 in a row was the most. And then they had I think they had a bag skate practice where Maurice just had them doing battle drills and got them right back. And then all of a sudden they just started whooping everyone's ass again, right? So I think they would be back. The other one for me that I like tonight, I don't know. They don't have who's starting yet for Seattle, but I like Utah right now. I think Vejmelka is playing very, very good right now. He's got a .918 save percentage. And he is a guy that
another lefty.
It's got to be the lefty, man. It's got to be. And he's a guy that I played with, and he is just a really, really good goal. I think he had a little bit of a lull last year, but
he did.
You grind your whole life, and then you get a big payday, and your life changes. And I think he's back to where he needs to be. And I think he's a guy that's going to play really well tonight against Seattle.
Well, it figures because I was pumping Connor Ingram all off season with my fantasy hockey stuff. Like he gets hurt, and Vejmelka's been in a tear here. But you're right. A couple years ago, remember he went on that crazy run where he sort of came out of nowhere, and now he's back on the map big time in this league.
Yeah, he's playing very, very well. And he is a guy that was like ready to be a pro, right? He's like, he bet on himself. He stayed at home till he's 25 and he came over and I was there that year in Arizona. And right away I was like, man, because guys would ask me, right? Because I forget who the other goalie was. He was like a young Czech kid that was there. He came from San Jose. They traded for him. Then when they traded Aiden Hill away from Arizona, and it was supposed to be me and him. And I watched Vejmelka right away in practice. And I was like, man, this is the guy, right? And then exhibition game, he was lights out. He just has that calm presence that I talk about a lot. And you see it. It's kind of like Carter George right now for World Juniors. He looks like a pro. He looks like he's ready to go, though, does he not? To me, like you watch the other young guys, they're all over the map. And I think Vejmelka has that presence in that. And I'm surprised that Armstrong hasn't traded him away yet to try to get some more prospects.
How about our guy, Jack Ivankovic, played that game against Latvia, but he was really good. He was really good, and he's on the World Junior team, right? I think he's going to be the starter next year, quite frankly.
Yeah, he played very, very well. Yeah. And that shootout, there's like how many? What they get him in the 8th round or 9th round? They finally got one, right? Like he was rock solid, and that's a tough game to play. And when you're standing still for a while, and they come down and get a good, high quality chance on you.
Yeah, dovetail to this podcast. How do you lose to Latvia? But fortunately, I think for everybody, we're not a Team Canada podcast. We cover the Toronto Maple Leafs. So Huts, we'll leave it at that. As mentioned off the top, this is our final show of 2024. No show on Tuesday, no show on Wednesday. So Rosie's going to be back in the mix on Thursday. We're obviously going to preview the second game of the 2 in a row against the Islanders and also give our thoughts on this game on New Year's Eve. But Huts, excellent year. Happy New Year. Hope everything's prosperous with the family. Happy holidays. Hope everything's going great as your kids stay home for another week before they go back to school. And we're going to talk again in 2025, my man.
Sounds good, my man. Always enjoy it. And another year in the books, and we'll have another good one. Hopefully we got more to talk about come playoff time. That's what we're all hoping for.
Yeah, 2025, the year of the Stanley Cup for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But hey, what do we know? We're just amateurs being a podcast. I got your picture up today. Look, there it is.
I see that. Yeah, that's don't look up the winery. Don't look up my stats that year. Okay, everybody.
How many games do you play with Arizona?
3.
You got that picture. That's a great picture.
Nah, paid me for the whole season though. Eh? They don't pay me per game, eh, pal?
I love it. So I echo those sentiments to everybody in the chat. Happy New Year to you. We'll talk in 2025 at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. For producer Vic and Carter Hutton, I'm Nick Alberga. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Roseau. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.